Hello, this is Astrologer Coach Sonja Francis, and today we're going to be talking about the upcoming new moon, which will be in 2 degrees of Gemini on May 22nd at 1:39 p.m. East Coast time in the US, which is also New York time, and at 6:39 p.m. London time. Now, this marks not only the beginning of a new moon cycle, but also the beginning of eclipse season because we have eclipses coming up. And this eclipse season will last until July 20th, so for a really good long time. Now, as best as you can, get really quiet around the time of the new moon and see if you're getting any new messages or ideas or anything's coming to you or through you. And if you are, fold them into your intentions as you're setting intentions for your new moon cycle. If that's something that you do, if you have that practice. And I will also talk about this process later in the forecast. And I will give you the very best and most potent times to set your intentions this month. So stay tuned for that. And please always remember also to take advantage of the timestamps that I have added to the description part of the video in case you want to watch the video in shorter sequences or you want to go back to certain coaching questions that I have in the video. All right, now before we talk about the new moon, let me say a couple of things about eclipse season because some of you might not know what that is. So eclipse season starts 10 or 14 days before the first eclipse, and then it ends with after the last eclipse is over, depending on what the last eclipse is, but between 10 or 14 days after the last eclipse. So it's a good long stretch of time depending on how many eclipses we have. And this eclipse season, we have 3 eclipses in a row, 2 lunar eclipses and 1 solar eclipse. And eclipses are times of uncertainty. They're sort of Uranian in nature. So anything could happen between now and July 20th. Or I should say between May 22nd and July 20th, right? Because maybe you're watching this video before May 22nd. So it is important to remember that eclipses open a door to the next level of our soul's evolution. That's really important because that's what they're there for. So as best as you can, stay both grounded and flexible. Don't jump the gun for the next 8.5 weeks if possible. Even if you feel compelled to do something very strongly, do your best to simply observe that urge. The exception would be something that just happens organically. So if something just sort of unfolds and happens organically, then let that happen because that's part of what needs to happen during the eclipse cycle. But if you are at all ambivalent about a possible action that you want to be taking, you definitely want to hold off until eclipse season ends on July 20th. Now, eclipses bring major endings and beginnings. So as best as you can, just trust that whatever is leaving is making space for something better. And the more we're willing to change, the easier this is going to be. So open heart, open mind, always a good idea with eclipse season. And ask for support, if you need support during this time because things might be a little bit heightened or intense, ask for support. Whether that's spiritual support or emotional support or, any kind of physical support, ask for it. Another thing I should mention is that if you have projects or interactions that got underway prior to eclipse season, so before May 22nd, then that's a little bit different. So I don't want you to stop your life just because it is eclipse season. So anything that has already started, whether that's, an intention that you set for something or an action that you already took on something or something that's already in the process that started before May 22nd, keep going, okay? Now, we will also talk about the upcoming 3 eclipses in more detail in my next forecasting forum. So if you want to know about these powerful lunations and how they're going to impact you personally, then feel free to join us. We will apply what's coming up to our own birth charts as always. And the forum is this time on May 31st at 11:30 a.m. East Coast time in the US. And if you need more information, click on the link below this video or go to my homepage to astrologercoach.com and look for the forecasting forum countdown. Okay. Oh, one more thing. Registration to the forum also includes access to the next members lunar eclipse video. So if you're interested in watching that and do the forum, I would say, sign up, and then you get access to that video as well, which has a lot of great information in it, of course. And also there is an early bird special that will be available until May 28th. So that's also something worth mentioning. Now let's go back to the new moon. One major thing to note in this new moon chart is that we now have 4 planets in retrograde motion, and 3 of them are still stationing and therefore exalted. So they're moving slower than any of the other planets. And so what does that mean? Something is in our face in regards to the energies of Saturn, Jupiter, and Venus. And something is demanding our attention and awareness. And I will talk more about this in a little bit, but let me first talk a little bit more about the Gemini influence of this new moon, and then we'll come back to the stationing planets. Now, with the new moon in Gemini for the next 4 weeks, we are asked to connect with others and share our little hearts out. So because Gemini is the archetype of curiosity, communication in all its form, and mental connections. So it really represents the development of language and intelligence, as well as our ability to adapt and relate to our immediate environment. So whoever we're interacting with on a day-to-day basis, that's sort of connected to the Gemini energy. Now, this is a very busy energy that focuses on collecting information. And so we're invited to look at our mental programming and conditioned mind to see what needs to go and what new thought structures or new information we might want to engage with. So Gemini is asking us to stay in motion, to keep moving, right? On a mental level, to keep moving, to think about all that we'll need to know in order to move forward and to connect and share ourselves with other people. So that's really a big part of Gemini, right? So here are some questions that you can ask yourself with this new moon. What motivates me to learn? I mean, that's a really wonderful question, right? Because everyone has such a different learning style, right? Like people just learn very differently. And unfortunately in our school system, this is not always very honored, right? That we put 30 kids into one classroom and then they all have to learn at the same pace and in the same way, which of course is not really realistic, right? Because everyone has a different way of how they learn. So what motivates me personally to learn? Like, what is that? And when I talk to myself about sharing or processing information, what do I typically say? So when I talk to myself, right, this inner dialogue about sharing or processing information, what do I typically say? Because, everyone will have a different relationship to that. Some people will love to share, and other people will really resist or not like sharing at all. Or processing information. Like some people will just be like, too much work or too much this or whatever. So what do you say to yourself about that? Because our inner dialogue is very powerful. It holds a lot of power over us. So it's very important to notice these things and not let them be sort of like this weird autopilot thing that happens in the background that we don't pay attention to. Now, what do I say to myself about being connected to others? About my intellectual capacities. So what do I say about these things? Now, if you want to have access to the new moon questions from this video, because there's going to be many, many more. If you want to have access to them in writing, if you want to journal on these questions or meditate on them or whatever it is that you want to do with them, that is available. If you become a member, you can get access to the full moon article, which has all the questions in it. You can also get access to the full moon videos every month. Those are available to my members as well. And then if that's something that sounds enticing or it's something that you'd like to check out, just go to my website, AstrologerCoach.com, and just look at the various levels of membership that's currently available. All right. And if you're already a member, check your membership portal by signing into your account, and you will find all the posts inside the My Content tab. And the new moon questions are available via the new moon in Gemini article. All right, so back to the new moon. The spiritual goal of Gemini is the development of perception, thought, and communication. So we're invited to become aware of all the new connections that get created in the brain with each new thought or memory. So the more we think a particular thought, therefore, of course, the deeper those pathways in the brain become. And this is something that's scientifically proven, right? That when you think a thought often and all the time, there's like something that gets ingrained. It's almost like, you're digging a trench in your brain with that thought, because you're thinking it so many times that it becomes really embedded in there. Now, if it's a wonderful thought, that might not be so bad. If it's a thought that is not really serving us or supporting us in keeping our frequencies at a higher vibration, then that might not be so helpful. So we want to be aware of that, right? So ask yourself, what mental paths do I keep heading down, even though I know I don't need to go there anymore? So something that might be connected to the past, something that might be connected to our childhood, to our conditioning. What mental paths do I keep heading down even though I know I don't need to go there anymore? And what might curiosity do for me when listening to myself? And how about when I connect with others? What is curiosity going to do then? So curiosity plays a really big role with the Gemini energy because it is its very highest vibration, curiosity, right? Because curiosity always keeps our mind wide open. Now let's take a brief look at the 3 retrograde planets that are still stationing and that are exalted in the sky right now. And so we want to know a little bit about that, right? So we can kind of align ourselves with those energies. So Saturn is one of them, right? We said Saturn, Jupiter, Venus, right? So Saturn represents our earthly structures and long-term commitments. And it also shows us what works in our current physical reality and what doesn't. And where we need to have better boundaries and be realistic about our own limitations or other people's limitations or society's limitations. And then taking those things one at a time, ask yourself, what is demanding my attention regarding all those qualities? Now, Saturn's retrograde phase invites us to take a closer look at our current long-term commitments and limitations and to start restructuring anything that has gone out of alignment with who we are in our current reality. So, of course, there's a lot more that can be said about Saturn's retrograde phase. So if you want a more detailed description of that, please read my weekly forecast for May 11th. That's when Saturn went retrograde, and that's when I wrote about that in more detail. And if you don't have access to my weekly forecasts right now, you may want to join my online community. And I will also have a link below this video that you can click on to do so if that's of interest to you. Now let's talk about Jupiter. Jupiter represents our belief systems and expectations of life, usually based on our cultural conditioning. So where we come from, where we were born into, religious backgrounds, such things, social background, political background. Now it shows us where we want to grow and where we need to expand our mind and explore beyond what we already know. So basically, we want to tap into a higher sense of wisdom. And in particular, the wisdom that's gained from our direct experience with life. So something that we know through experience because we've lived through something rather than our conditioning or what we were told by society. So ask yourself, what is demanding my attention regarding this growth? So that's connected to the Jupiter station. Now, Jupiter's retrograde phase invites us to tap into our belief systems and realign what is out of sync. So it's an invitation to look for where we still need to grow on an individual level and where we have outgrown our current social structures. And so, again, there's much more to say about that. So for more information on that, if you are already a member of my online community, feel free to read the weekly forecast for May 14th. Because on May 14th is when Jupiter went retrograde, right? Now, Venus is the last of the 3 stationing planets. Venus represents our values, including how we value ourselves, the physical realm, money and possessions, and others. Other people. So again, taking those areas one at a time, ask yourself, what is demanding my attention regarding those things at this time? Now, as best as you can, with all of those planets, simply observe. This is not about taking any actions or changing anything, but it's about becoming more aware of how we're connected to these energies, right? This is what we do during the station phase. Now, Venus retrograde asks us to bring our lives into greater balance and reevaluate our finances, relationships, and quality of life. So if you'd like to learn how Venus's 6-week retrograde phase in Gemini and also the 20 months transit of the moon nodes in Gemini, Sagittarius, will impact you personally, feel free to get the corresponding webinar and see how it all might relate to your own birth charts, because we've done a webinar on that. And you can purchase this webinar by clicking on the link below this video. But before you invest in the whole 97-minute webinar, feel free to watch a 23-minute excerpt. I will put a link for that below as well. So you have that to watch in case, that will tell you if you want to do the whole webinar or not. Now, if you are already a star member of my online community, check your email for the link to the MP4 video recording and enjoy watching it. I sent it out on May 3rd, late in the evening. So go see. And if you can't find the link, if you can't find the email, you can also email me and just ask me to send it again. Okay. Now let's look at some of the aspects of this new moon chart. Most importantly, because of course, that's what makes this new moon unique and what makes it different from other new moons in Gemini, right? So the new moon in Gemini trines Saturn in Aquarius and squares Mars in Pisces. So let's unpack that one by one. So the trine to Saturn invites us to bring a new level of authenticity and practicality to our collective vision for the future and to make realistic choices when connecting with others, whether that's online or in person. So we face life on life's terms and we feel up to the challenges. We're much more able with this trine to face what we need to face together and through really helping each other and collaborating with each other. Now ask yourself, where am I ready to focus my ideas for the future in a mature way? And how could I contribute to my various communities, whether that's online or right here in my locality where I'm living, in a realistic way? How could I contribute to my various communities in a realistic way? So it doesn't have to be huge, right? When we're saying contribute, everybody needs to find out what that means for them, how they can best contribute. So some people might want to contribute financially, right? Some people might not be able to do that. They might want to contribute by just shining their light and just bringing love to people, by supporting other people with little things, like just moving the trash out to the curb for somebody. There's so many ways in which we can contribute, whether that's locally or online, through a quote that we send out to people, through something that we share that we found ourselves online that we loved and we want to share that with other people that could raise other people's frequencies. That is a wonderful way to contribute. So don't think that you have to contribute in these huge ways, but do what you can. And what might I want to share so that others benefit in a concrete way? So if you do share something verbally or in writing, or if you share something in person, how might that benefit in a concrete way? So think about those things, because Saturn wants to really be concrete and wants to be real, wants to make it workable. Now, the square to Mars asks us to make adjustments and find creative solutions, because a square is always like something needs to stretch. Something is a challenge, right? So our energy levels could run high if we get plenty of rest. Very important with this square to Mars in Pisces. Plenty of rest. So as best as you can, take care of your body and pay particular attention to its energy levels. Your body will communicate with you and it will let you know what it needs, but you got to pay attention because it's subtle. Sometimes our mind can take us away from the body's information. It can distract us from what we're actually needing in the now moment. And this is why this is a stretch, right? Because Gemini is the mind energy that kind of is very distractive and constantly wants to be in movement. But then Mars in Pisces wants us to connect with the now moment, with the energy body that we are, and it wants us to also see where we're at, right, with our energies. So it would be best to take breaks whenever your energy starts to dip. That's really going to be helpful. So ask yourself, could I trust my own energy body and listen to its subtle messages? Could I allow actions to come through me, allowing my intuition to guide me? And again, with intuition, of course, we got to be present, right? Intuition is not mind energy. Intuition is deeper. It's in our heart. It's in every cell of our body. That's where intuition lives. So it's not the mind chatter that gets us to connect to intuition. So could I allow actions to come through me, allowing my intuition to guide me? Could I give myself a break when I start to feel restless, anxious, or impatient? Could I give myself a break? And how might taking a deep breath support my body and mind as restlessness shows up? And this could be, of course, something that we could be feeling with this square, is this restlessness. So how could taking a deep breath help us with that? Now, Mercury, which is the ruler of Gemini, which is very important in this new moon chart, is in its own sign at the time of the new moon, and therefore also exalted. So we have a lot of exalted energies with this new moon chart, and we're starting eclipse season. So lots going on with this lunar cycle. Now, Mercury aligns with retrograde Venus, and they are both within 10 degrees of the North Node in Gemini. So as you can imagine, social interactions are especially important to us right now for these next 28 days. And we are invited to remain curious and focused on listening as well as sharing. So listening and sharing, that's that duality in Gemini, right? Gemini is not just about talking, it's also about receiving the information, right? Giving and receiving the information. It's duality. Now, too often our habitual autopilot thinking gives every thought meaning, embellishes it with stories, and then files these tales in certain categories like good and bad and horrible and shameful and exciting and so on, etc., etc. Now, one thing that we need to remember, though, is Mercury is symbolized as the messenger of the heavens and is neutral. It's really, its job is to be neutral, delivering information without agenda. So it's really very much like the saying, don't shoot the messenger, right? This is a good prompt that reminds us to process information, to share it, but to most of all, keep an open mind and to stay neutral. Now, bear in mind that when thoughts move through our own consciousness, right, when we perceive thoughts, when they appear in our consciousness, they are not good or bad. They are simply information. Something's just arising in consciousness, whether that's coming from our conditioning or from outside sources. It doesn't matter, but it's just information that's coming up. So ask yourself, if that were true, What might I choose to do with the information that comes into consciousness when a thought passes through? So if that is true, that it just sort of like, arises and that it's neutral, what might I choose to do with the information that comes into consciousness when a thought passes through? And could I notice my desire to comment on these thoughts, to judge these thoughts, or categorize my own thoughts, to put them into this like good, bad, exciting, whatever? And what might be possible if I kept my mind 5% more open, even when it's something I've heard a million times pass through my consciousness? Even if there's a thought that comes through that is like, yep, I've heard it 1,000 times, it's very familiar, could I still keep my mind 5% more open? So I recommend you also take a look at my brief video, Venus in Gemini Aligns with the North Node. You can watch this on my website or on my Facebook fan page or on my YouTube channel for free. And it is part of my additional support series that I've started a couple of months ago when all this started to happen with the coronavirus. And so while we're moving through these unusual times, I would like to offer these additional support videos. And this particular one was posted on May 2nd. So feel free to take a look at that because that might be an additional source of information for you and has some additional coaching questions as well. Now, the Mercury-Venus alignment in Gemini also makes a square to Neptune in Pisces. So here we have, this is our second square between Gemini and Pisces, right? The first one was between the new moon and Mars, and this one is between Mercury, Venus, and Neptune. So it's a similar dynamic, slightly different, but similar. This asks us to tune in and listen to our heart. We can be highly creative and inspired during this influence, but we can also be really overly sensitive and touchy or impractical. Because that Neptune in Pisces is very sensitive. It feels everything because it's connected on an energetic level, it's connected to everything. So it can be really hard to follow routines with this aspect or to concentrate on monotonous tasks. Something like work tasks or studies that involve attention to detail or strict procedures where we're really trying to direct our mind, to something specific. So as best as you can, be compassionate with yourself and others during this time, because this is going to be difficult for all of us, right, for the next 28 days. So ask yourself, where does the desire for knowing what's next drown out the intuitive voice that knows and understands the power and love the present moment provides? And this is a big question, right? So let me say that one more time. Where does the desire for knowing what's next, like that Gemini energy, right? Like constantly keep moving, next. It just wants to always be in motion, mentally speaking. So where does the desire for knowing what's next drown out the intuitive voice that knows and understands the power and the love the present moment provides? And of course, that's Neptune in Pisces, right? Neptune in Pisces is very clear about the present moment, the love that's there, the power that we have in the present moment. And that's also connected to our intuitive voice, that presence. So notice when your busy mind distracts you from the present moment. And then ask, how might a moment of silence bring me back to what's here now? And might it allow me to drop back into my heart? And so if you're feeling this inability to focus or inability to pay attention to detail, bring yourself back to the present moment. Take a deep breath, right? Just give yourself a moment of silence. Now, since this is a square between Venus, Mercury, and Neptune, with squares, we always want to trace back to the prior conjunction between those two planets. So in this case, the last Venus-Neptune conjunction, which was January 27th, and the Mercury-Neptune conjunction, which was April 3rd. So think back to both of those dates and ask yourself, what did I open my heart more fully to at this time? Where did my imagination guide me? Was there a creative or spiritual encounter that I remember around those dates? Now, Gemini is also associated with internal information. Our nervous system is in constant communication with all of our cells and organs, right? So the nervous system is part of the information system that's connected to Gemini. So it's not just the mind. Now, the body-mind connection is possible because of this constant communication, because of our nervous system. So we want to make sure that we have a healthy relationship between the nervous system and the body, right? Because that's where the communication takes place. So, or we want to make sure we have a healthy nervous system, basically, not one that's too revved up. So deep, slow breathing works wonders on this system. So there are many breathing techniques out there, and I've mentioned breathing before already. One of the simplest and best is the square breath. So you breathe in 4 counts, then you hold for 4 counts, and then you breathe out for 4 counts. Then you wait for 4 counts, and then you start this sequence over again. So let's do this together, actually, if you like. If not, you can skip this. But let's just try this and see how this feels to our nervous system. So breathe in. So it takes practice, actually, to do this really well. I just noticed when I was breathing in and holding and breathing out that my breath started to get caught a little bit, and it felt a little uncomfortable. So it's something to just kind of practice. But one thing I did notice from doing this is that once you kind of like let go, it's like, wow, okay, I'm more present, actually, right? I'm more in my body. So as you do this, even if you just do it 2 or 3 times, right, which doesn't take very long, as you can see from what we just did, it actually does something to your body, does something to your system. It supports you in becoming more present. So ask yourself, might a calming breath support a healthy communication with my body? And how might I use this simple breathing technique for my advantage? And what if it could help me stabilize my nervous system and calm my fears and anxieties? Because one of the things that happens with an over-revved nervous system, when there's too much information coming through and we're not able to be present with our body, the nervous system gets overly activated. And with an overly activated nervous system, there is anxiety that we can experience because of that, right? And fears. So what if it could help me stabilize my nervous system and calm my fears and anxiety if I use this breathing technique? Wouldn't that be wonderful? All right, so to sum it all up for this new moon, we are seeking balance on so many levels, and we need to pay attention to so many energies right now, internally and externally. And so as best as you can, remain curious, open-minded, and adaptable for the next 28 days. And of course, that's particularly true because it's also eclipse season. So trust yourself, your heart knows the way. Allow the mind to become a neutral observer as much as possible, and ask yourself, am I just my mind, or am I more than my mind? And I want you to really investigate this, right? Because very often we go through life, and if we're on autopilot, right, with our mind, very often we don't even notice that we ignore everything but the mind, right? Like that we become the mind instead of all of who we are, right? So just really check in with yourself. Am I just my mind, or am I more than my mind? If I am more than just my mind, what is beyond the mind? So if there's more than just thinking, what is beyond that? And I want you to really check here. And these two questions are actually fantastic to use in meditation. You know, I would really invite you to use these as you're meditating, especially in the next 28 days. Now, there's another question, or another couple of questions that are really powerful too. What might I discover if I stay open to being inspired by life rather than focusing on all the bad news and the denser vibrational thoughts that come through? Because of course, there is always going to be information that comes through that is heavier or denser in its vibration, right? Whether that's coming from our own conditioning or whether that's coming from outside sources, that does happen, right? So, but what might I discover if I stay open to being inspired by life rather than focusing on all those bad or denser vibrational thoughts that are coming through? Because it's a choice whether we choose to focus on something and kind of like cling on to it and get attached to it, or whether we just kind of notice it and we allow it to move through. There's a huge difference. So might a 10-minute meditation or mantra or prayer practice help make me more aware of my relationship to my thoughts and what arises in consciousness on an ongoing basis? Might that be the case? And how might laughter or singing or humming support my body-mind-heart connection? And this is actually something that has been proven, right? Scientifically speaking, that, you know, when we laugh, it's like this release. It's like this heart opening. When we sing, when we hum. I mean, this is not just something I'm making up here. This is scientifically proven. So just experiment with that. Like, experiment with these things for the next 28 days. How might laughter, singing, or humming support my body-mind-heart connection? And just observe and see what you discover as you're doing that. And what about yoga or acupuncture or craniosacral therapy? I mean, there's so many modalities out there, you know, that could really help us with this body-mind-heart connection. All right, now if you have an ascendant or a career point or any personal planets in 0 to 4 degrees of Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, or Pisces, then this new moon, of course, is going to impact you more than others. But even if you don't have points or personal planets in those degrees and signs, take a look at your natal chart, at your birth chart, and just look to see, where does 2 degrees of Gemini land in my chart? And the house placement of the new moon will indicate which area of life is most impacted for the next 28 days. Now, if you don't know how to do that or how to look that up, you can check out my 30-minute class on how to read my birth chart. You can get that for free via my homepage, AstrologerCoach.com. If you scroll down on the homepage and you go to a window that says free class and you click on that, that's that class, how to read my birth chart. And that will show you how to look that up in your birth chart. Now, the new moon is also the best time to set some powerful intentions for the next month. So let's talk about new moon intentions now, right? Just like we were mentioning early on in the video. So the best time to set intentions is always after the new moon has become exact, never before. We also want to avoid moon void, of course, phases, and the first 48 hours are usually the most potent. So this month we have 41 and a half hours in sequence, in a row, to set some intentions, because there's not going to be a moon void, of course, for that amount of time. So between 1:39 p.m. on May 22nd and 7:09 a.m. on May 24th, New York time, we have time to set our new moon intentions. Now, if you live outside the East Coast time zone in the US or in Northern America, and converting time zones isn't your thing, I suggest joining my Facebook fan page, or you can follow me on Twitter, because I will be posting reminders on May 22nd, on May 23rd, and on the 24th to let you know when it's time to set your intentions. And when you read these reminders on Twitter or on my Facebook fan page, you can just simply set your intentions at that time, right? So for more information about setting intentions, you can also go to my website and go to my blog page and then look for astrology articles, or you can also look for a tag that says New Moon Intentions. I will also have a link below this video that you can just click on to get to the New Moon Intentions article. And yeah, so then you can just read up on that and get more information on how to do that, right? If this is your first time. Now, to sign up for my free monthly newsletter, you can do that by writing us an email. You just write newsletter in the subject line and just send that to info@astrologercoach.com, and then we'll add you to the newsletter email, which will go out approximately once or twice a month. And it includes special offers, my new moon videos, announcements for webinars or courses or retreats or anything like that. Okay? Now, if you have any general questions about the new moon or astrology, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to answer questions. Again, info@astrologercoach.com. If you have any personal questions that require of me to pull up your birth chart, please book a reading via my website. And if you have any questions that are connected to what's coming up within the next 30 or 40 days in terms of the eclipses, then join my next monthly forecasting forum on May 31st. Again, we'll talk about 2 lunar eclipses and 1 solar eclipse. Also, something that I want to mention again is that the members full moon video, which will be, the next one will be a lunar eclipse video, is included when you register for the monthly forecasting forum. So just know that you get that as well. And there is an early bird special that will be available until May 28th. So that might be of interest to you as well. And you can register either below by clicking on the link below this video or on my homepage via the monthly forecasting forum countdown. All right. Now, my members will see me in about 2 weeks around the time of the full moon, or we should say around the time of the lunar eclipse, because that's what's next. So we can look at how far we've come since setting our new moon intentions, but also to take a look at what this eclipse is all about, because of course eclipses are so powerful. They're like really powerful full moons or powerful new moons. And everyone else is going to connect with me 4 weeks from now for the next new moon, which will be a solar eclipse. So we'll talk about the solar eclipse in our next new moon video. And if you like to, also feel free to watch out for some additional support videos that will be available as well already before the next new moon video. All right, everybody. Enjoy the new moon energy, stay healthy, and do your best to keep raising your own frequencies, your own vibrations, and keep being the light that you are. Much love to all of you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. I'm astrologer coach Sonja Francis.